Welcome to SI Now. It is Tuesday, January 17th, and I'm Maggie Gray. Today, we'll take a look at the upcoming Baseball Hall of Fame vote. How long will it take before Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens are voted in? But we start with LeBron James, Draymond Green, and the Warriors' win over Cleveland on Monday. SI NBA writer Ben Golliver is here to discuss all the antics that we saw. The Warriors were dominant, Ben, but again, the big takeaway from this game is Draymond Green's behavior, despite the fact that he recorded a triple-double. At this point, should we accept that Draymond is who he is, and is the only question remaining whether or not he's worth it?
Yeah, I think the real pivot point for him to change would have been last summer, where he got caught up in a few off-season, scandals, quote unquote. But I think he's past the point of no return. He's going to be who he is, and everybody else has come to accept it. I think we should too. That game was fascinating. Golden State looked so good, and Cleveland really looked undermanned. They lose Kevin Love at halftime. They didn't have J.R. Smith. They just didn't have the firepower to keep up. But that's the type of Warriors play that they need to have when they go against Cleveland, because number one, it was confident, and number two, it was unselfish. I mean, after kind of choking away a lead in Game 7, after collapsing on Christmas, I thought this was the type of game that really, reinstilled their confidence. I think the big question, though, if you're Draymond is, there's a thin line between being fearless and being foolish. I mean, he clearly does not fear LeBron. He goes and levels him, right near center court, and then he kind of mocks him afterwards. You wonder, how's LeBron going to respond to that? 'Cause that's certainly going in his memory bank. And if these two teams face in June, we're going to be seeing that clip a lot. And I'm sure we're going to see a highly motivated LeBron after that kind of an incident.
I want to ask you about June, but in the meantime, Klay Thompson, he is our adrenaline performer. It's presented by Toyota. Let's go places. Of course, Klay was the Dubs' leading scorer on Monday with 26 points. But, Ben, the next time these two teams meet would be in the NBA Finals. From what you've seen so far, is it a foregone conclusion that it will be Warriors and Cavs for the third consecutive year?
Well, there's a few things that could happen here. Like I said, Cleveland's got some injury issues. And you look at Golden State, they've had real problems closing games against good teams, not only against Cleveland, but also against Memphis recently and against Houston in overtime. So, there could be a situation where they can't quite find the right balance between their stars if games tighten up and somebody knocks them off in the postseason. For Cleveland, it would be a similar story to a couple of years ago where health issues just put too much strain on LeBron and somebody else finally kind of jumps up to challenge them. But clearly, if we're betting people, we're betting on this so-called three match because they're clearly in the driver's seat in both of their conferences.
Looking forward to that. Well, another team that has been capturing headlines is the New York Knicks. Since Christmas, they've lost 9 of 11 games, and Phil Jackson and Carmelo Anthony are meeting. What do you think comes out of that meeting?
Well, there's been this back and forth about whether Phil Jackson's longtime associate, Charlie Rosen, was kind of taking shots at Carmelo Anthony on behalf of Jackson. So I'm sure this meeting is going to be kind of a clear the air. Jackson distancing himself from that, saying he wouldn't do that to Carmelo Anthony. But if you're Anthony and you've seen Jackson kind of have this passive-aggressive approach to management and to comments about his players in the past, I mean, is there really a trust factor there? I think that's a legitimate question. But going forward, Anthony also said, hey, is it almost time to talk maybe about trades here? It gets very difficult. You look at the size of his salary, you look at his age, and then you also look at, where is his game at right now? To me, I do not think Carmelo Anthony deserves to be an all-star this year. The Knicks haven't been good enough. He hasn't had a big enough impact. And so when you're talking about trying to move a salary that big, it just gets very difficult. And so this talk could be, much ado about nothing. Everybody kind of apologizes, slaps each other on the back, and they go back to losing basketball games.
I should mention Charlie Rosen. The quote that he said was, Melo had outlived his usefulness in New York. Ouch. What is the best trade scenario that includes Carmelo Anthony, in your opinion?
To be honest, I think he's stuck. He kind of made his bed in New York, and I think he's got to lay in it right now. When you look at the other contenders who would kind of want to bring him on, let's say the Clippers, that would mean parting with Blake Griffin. If you're the Cavaliers, it would mean parting with a Kevin Love. If you're the Toronto Raptors, that would mean parting with probably 3 or 4 different guys just to make the contract numbers work. I don't think Carmelo Anthony is the type of guy you really blow up your core for if you're one of those teams. He doesn't really put you over the top. Defensively, we all know the questions there. And then also his offensive style in terms of pounding the ball, wanting his own shot. He's a very good offensive player, but Is he that much better than a Blake Griffin or a Kevin Love that motivates those teams to make a move? Like I said, I think he's stuck here, at least in the short term, because clearly he's not going to want to go to a rebuilding spot at this point of his career. It's very difficult to see him move to a team that's not sort of in that contender conversation. I actually think the best case for Melo is just to hang tight for a couple years. Once his current contract is up, he can always try to go, form a super team or kind of latch on, take a smaller contract and maybe go play with the LeBron in Cleveland or team up with the Chris Paul, wherever he might be. I think that's probably his best bet. But I know patience is a tough sell because he's been losing in New York for quite a while now.
Yeah, and the spotlight is very hot on Carmelo Anthony right now. Then finally, the 76ers. They've won 6 out of their last 8, but they're still outside the top 8 and a playoff spot in the East. Now, we're used to Philly being sellers at the deadline. Will they be buyers at the trade deadline this year?
Well, I'm not sure if it's come to that. I think their big addition is still Ben Simmons, right? That's what everyone's getting really hyped about. When is he going to be back healthy? When is he going to be an impact guy? What they've seen so far this year is that Joel Embiid, when he's on the court, is a big-time plus player. He's the kind of guy who could lead you to a playoff position once his minutes increase and once he's no longer kind of strategically resting to kind of keep the back-to-backs and so forth off of him. I think you let this play out naturally. If you're Philadelphia, it's not the worst case in the world to fall outside or even well outside of the playoff picture because that just means one more lottery pick. They've missed on a couple to me. I'm not sure that Nerlens Noel is going to be this big-time player. Certainly Jahlil Okafor does not look like he is worthy of his draft selection. So I still think they need to improve their young talent, that core around guys like Embiid and Simmons. For that reason, I wouldn't be making any quick fixes at the deadline. I'd play this out naturally. Try to really hit a couple home runs in the draft if you can, and then move forward next year with the idea that that's the time you really make a playoff push.
Ben Golliver, always appreciate your insight. Love listening to you and Andrew Sharp on the Open Floor podcast. Give it a download. Ben, thanks a lot.
Oh, no problem. Thanks, Maggie.
All right. On Wednesday, the 2017 Baseball Hall of Fame class will be announced. Yesterday, I spoke with our own Jaffe about what to expect when it comes to alleged steroid users Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. Jay, the big storyline in the Hall of Fame voting this year is the massive gain that many suspected steroid users may have. Now, Bonds and Clemens have risen to the mid-60s in terms of percentage in voting. How soon do you anticipate these two will make the Hall of Fame?
Well, first of all, I think we're going to see their percentages come down a little bit. The voters who don't reveal their ballots before the election have generally supported them less than the ones who do. I think we're going to see them in the high 50s by the end of this. Even so, that's a big deal. Crossing 50% has historically been a strong indicator that these guys are going in eventually. I would expect this is going to take probably another 2-3 years, though, still. They're eligible through 2022, so they're halfway through their eligibility coming into this year. So it's not a huge rush, but this does seem to be like the tide has turned.
Jay, what has been the biggest factor in more writers voting for potential steroid users to make it into the Hall?
I think there are two factors going on here. One of them is the fact that Mike Piazza got in last year. He was somebody who had admitted to using Andro, which was legal at the time, but I think it called attention to the fact that there were probably already players who have used PEDs who are in the Hall of Fame. The second thing is the election of Bud Selig by the Today's Game Era Committee back in December. He, of course, was involved in prolonging the steroid problem in the game. Many feel that he didn't address the problem soon enough. He was also involved in collusion with the owners conspiring not to sign each other's free agents back in the 80s. If those two things weren't disqualifying for the commissioner of baseball, then I think that there's a certain segment of voters who believes that the pre-testing era PED use of Bonds and Clemens shouldn't be disqualifying either. So they have turn their attentions toward that. People, even as high up as former BBWA President Susan Slusser, have agreed that that's probably the right way to look at it.
That's a very interesting comparison. Now that David Ortiz has retired, the clock has started on his potential Hall of Fame candidacy. Will Ortiz change the stigma around designated hitters and potentially help Edgar Martinez get into the Hall of Fame?
I think so. I mean, Edgar's in his 8th year of eligibility here. He's experiencing a spike. He's going to be above 60% for the first time, and he has two years left to get that to get in. You know, there's an ongoing debate as to who of them is the better DH. The designated hitter of the award is named after Edgar. When you adjust for ballpark and era, his stats are slightly better. Of course, Ortiz has the championships and the postseason heroics. So you know, it's an argument that I think is has its adherents on both sides. But I do think that talking about David Ortiz has helped Edgar Martinez, and I do think eventually he's going to be in the Hall of Fame.
Jay, let's talk about pitchers. While Mike Mussina is gaining, Curt Schilling does not appear to be getting the votes this year, despite being one of the best postseason pitchers in baseball history. One could look to Schilling's political remarks as a reason he is not gaining votes. Is that a fair precedent the voters are setting for keeping Schilling off the ballot?
Well, I don't think it's just politics. I mean, you know, what changed here is these virulent messages via social media, attacks on transgender people, his promotion of a T-shirt that advocated the lynching of journalists. He really tried to make light of it. I think that's beyond politics. There are no jokes to be made about lynching, and a lot of voters have taken umbrage at that and have decided that at least this year they're not going to vote for him. And you know, that's you can debate whether that's the right way of going about it, but it's certainly something that we've never really seen a precedent for, you know, in the modern history of voting.
Jay, by Schilling not receiving votes, will this push Mike Mussina into the Hall of Fame?
Well, it's difficult to argue. I mean, it seems like a convenient argument. It's difficult to actually argue that when you look at the ballots that have been made public so far, of which there are about 200, I counted only about two or three that where Schilling lost a vote relative to last year and Mussina gained a vote relative to last year. I do think Mussina right now, he's going to have a higher voting percentage than Schilling did last year, and looks like he's going to be on track for the Hall of Fame eventually. As to who gets in first, yeah, Mussina probably could get in first now because he's got fewer black marks against his name with this social media stuff.
Jay, on Wednesday we will know who makes the 2017 Hall of Fame class, and we're expecting Jeff Bagwell, Trevor Hoffman, and Tim Raines in his final year on the ballot to get in. How would you grade this potential Hall of Fame class?
Well, I think we don't really know whether it's going to be Hoffman or could be Vlad Guerrero or Ivan Rodriguez. All three of them are within the margin of error for predictions, right around 75%. I think any way you slice it, a three-person class would be great. I'm not sure that you can put Bagwell and Raines. I think, you know, I think they're both inner circle guys. It's taken the electorate a long time to come around to them. I think Pudge is an inner circle guy. I'm not sure I would make the same argument for Vlad or Hoffman, although I do see them as worthy Hall of Famers. If we get a four-person class, it would only be the fourth time in history. We've only seen one five-person class. That was in 1936, the inaugural class. I don't think you could put these guys in the class of Ty Cobb, Babe Ruth, Christy Mathewson, Walter Johnson, and Honus Wagner, that was the original class. These guys are great, but not quite that great.
Yeah, how high do we want to set the bar here? Of course, Tim Raines looks like he will get in after this very long wait. Why do you think it took so long for him to garner enough votes?
I think a lot of people really didn't appreciate just how great a candidate Tim Raines was. He spent a lot of his career in the shadow of Rickey Henderson as merely the second best leadoff hitter of all time. I think analytics and my work, as you know, and that of others has helped to shine a light on just what an impact he had as a high on base guy who was a great percentage base stealer and really one of the best players in baseball during a long stretch in the 1980s. And people have come around to that, and I'm gratified that my work has played a part in that. And I think it's been very cool to see the consensus assemble around him. So, you know, 10 years, they still call it, you know, like the guy who graduates last in his medical class, they still call you doctor. 10 years or 15 years or whatever it takes to get in, he's still a Hall of Famer. I think that's very cool.
The JAWS system assisting the likes of Tim Raines and others. Jay, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Sure thing, Maggie.
Certainly an exciting day for those who gain induction into the Hall of Fame. We're looking forward to seeing who makes the cut. Wednesday is also a big day in college hoops as Florida State and Notre Dame go head-to-head in a battle of the top two teams in the ACC. Yesterday, I caught up with the Seminoles sophomore sensation, Dwayne Bacon, to get his thoughts. Dwayne, let's start here. You were named to the Wooden Award Midseason Top 25 a week ago, so congratulations, because you are among elite company in college basketball. What would winning that award mean to you?
I mean, it would mean a lot just for, my team. We had a lot of new guys that joined our team, and we knew it was going to be a different ride, but we worked and trained to make the ride be a successful ride along the way. And so far, we've had a lot of success. We had a minor setback in our last game, but I mean, you're not going to win every game. I feel like we fought, but we didn't give it all we had, like we've been doing all year. I just feel like if we keep winning and I keep doing the best I can for this team to win, then that award could be mine. So, I mean, it would mean a lot, but, if I don't win it, I know it's a lot of great players out there that, has worked as hard as I have, and I'll just be happy for whoever wins it, just, if it's not me.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I want to touch on a couple things that you mentioned there. We'll get to Notre Dame in a moment, but you mentioned the NCAA tournament because the team barely missed the tournament last season. How did that snub affect you personally?
It definitely affected me all my life. I just, kind of worked to be the best player I can be and to be the best, bring the best I can to any team I was on. The year before that, I was in the national championship game in high school, my last high school year. The year before that, I had a great season. So, I mean, it was a lot of great seasons for me where I really lost. And coming in last year was a big test. I mean, we could have made the tournament if we won, just a couple more games, and it weighed on me a lot. It was definitely a major factor in me coming back to school just because I wanted to see what that tournament experience was like. So, I mean, we're on the right track right now. We just got to keep fighting.
All right, looking ahead to Notre Dame, the Irish have cracked the top 10 for the first time this season. They are undefeated in the ACC, and they're 3-0 on the road. What's the unique challenge that they pose when they face you guys on Wednesday?
We're a big-time team. They're a big-time team. Nobody thought we would be where we at today. They're a program that's been like this, been to the tournament, every year for I don't know how many years now. They're a great program, but, they still got to come in, and for South Africa and face, some guys that nobody thought would be this good. So, I mean, they're on a 2-win streak on the road right now, and we'll be their third game, but they got to come in here and we still got to fight the way we have been at home and the way we have been, outside of the North Carolina game.
Yeah, we're expecting a really great matchup. Thanks for the time. We appreciate it. Good luck on Wednesday against the Fighting Irish, and we hope to catch up with you again later on this season.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks.
Now, both of these teams have twin 16-2 records, and we're expecting a high-scoring affair with both squads averaging 80-plus points per game. For the Notre Dame side of things, let's welcome in Fighting Irish head coach Mike Brey. Coach, your team 3-0 on the road in ACC play, while the rest of the league, which many consider to be the toughest in the country, is a combined 8 for 25 in conference road games. What has your team showed you by winning in these hostile environments?
We've shown great mental toughness. It's really a group that is tough mentally and a high basketball IQ. That's a heck of a combination, and it serves you well on the road. I think Matt Farrell and Steve Astoria, our guards, really set the tone for us.
Speaking of Astoria, who would you compare him to? Who does he remind you of?
I'm trying to think back of guys I've had. Matt Carroll was a great player for us in my early years, but he does a little more than what Matt Carroll did. I call him a beautiful basketball player, and he moves on both ends of the floor. There's a fluidity and a feel and a knowledge of a guy that's really a lot older than he is. There's ACC coaches, all of them, almost to a man, rave about Vestoria because they notice it. We put him on the best guy on the other team. He's got Bacon on Wednesday night. Here's another, great. You got him, and then he's got to make every key pass, and then we'd like him to make every clutch shot, and he just kind of does that too, and then plays 38 minutes. Just an amazing career that this young man has had.
Coach, it seems like every year you just reload back-to-back Elite Eights, all the talent that you've lost, yet here you are, top 15 yet again. Do you feel like in some ways your program gets underappreciated considering how successful you've been?
We probably do a little bit. I mean, it's never something that keeps me up at night, and I think our players have used it as a little bit of a motivation. So, we don't have freshmen coming in that are on Chad Ford's NBA board. We have guys the old-fashioned way like Matt Farrell and Martin Gebbin and Steve Vastoria and Rex Pfluger getting better since they've been in a program that teaches, I don't know, maybe that's not sexy. I just don't get it. But, we have juniors that emerge for us, and everyone's shocked. And I kind of say, well, why are you shocked? They've been in our program for 2 years. They've played behind great players, and they've learned how to play.
Yeah, you're able to keep these guys on campus. You've won 7 in a row. Now you're going to face another top ACC team in Florida State. You already mentioned Dwayne Bacon and how much of a headache he could possibly be for the team. But what is the unique challenge that Florida State poses to the Irish?
Well, Bacon destroyed us last year there, but they've got much, much more than that. And Leonard's just done a fabulous job. And he told me all summer he was going to play 11 guys, and he's held his end of the bargain up. They wear you down with their depth, their length and athletic ability. You've got to play against a defensive team that's fresh and stays after you. They're really a gifted offensive group. They can put numbers on the board. They make shots. They're good passers. We've been underdogs in our last 2 road games, but we'll be almost double-digit underdogs Wednesday night.
Very interesting. It's going to be a tough environment in Tallahassee. Let's talk about Blacksburg for a moment, Coach. We noticed after you guys snapped that streak that you that's like a glide that you kind of did into the locker room after the game. It got posted on Twitter, and now we're all wondering if Dancing with the Stars is going to be in your future.
Well, my daughter said, Dad, you may want to stop that. But I still can move a little bit. The old point guard can move a little bit, but my daughter says maybe to calm it down.
Oh, we don't agree. We think we want more, Coach. We want more. Mike Brey, we wish you all the best on Wednesday when you head to Tallahassee to play Florida State. Thank you so much for joining us, and hope to catch up with you again soon.
Great to be with you. Take care.
Looking forward to that matchup, and that's going to do it for this Tuesday edition of SI Now. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern when I'll be joined by Washington Wizards small forward Otto Porter Jr. Until then, stick with SI.com for all the latest news. And, of course, follow us on Twitter, will you? At SI Now Live is our handle. Have a great afternoon. We'll see you tomorrow.